Okay, here we go into the soldering room. So, very popular room, isn't it, John, this room?
Yeah.
Everyone loves this room.
Yeah, right.
So here's John, our technician, and he's going to take you through how to do proper soldering.
Yes, this is our soldering room. I'll just start by just running through some of the equipment we've got in here, and then I'll show you how to do some soldering, and then you guys can have a go at doing some soldering yourself. So starting over this side is our pick and place machine for surface mount. We've made some boards for the school on there, so the kind of thing you put on there looks like this. This is a printed circuit board panel with multiple boards on there joined together, and that machine will place the components onto the board, and then we can take it from there, put it into the oven here, and that will melt the solder, and then the components will solder on the board. We've also got a couple of digital microscopes that we can use for inspecting solder joints. That one is just currently looking at an old memory chip. That's quite high magnification. This one we tend to use more just for the surface mount inspection. Okay, good. And then over this side are our main 6 soldering stations, which is where you'll be sat to do some soldering. On each station we have a exhaust extraction system, hose, soldering iron, solder, and a box of tools. And also you'll notice between each station we've got some funny looking things like an octopus. That actually, you can use that for holding circuit boards to help you solder. And if you just look over here behind John, I've got some here which show you how you can use these pieces of equipment, so that can help hold the board for you whilst you're soldering. There's a smaller one there, for example, or this kind of one, which actually is quite useful because this.
That's a lovely invention there.
This one actually allows you to put the components in one side, and then you can turn it over and then solder it on the other side. So they're quite useful, but generally you can solder boards on the bench in front of you. You don't necessarily need these kinds of tools. Right, so what I will do under the microscope is I'll just solder a component on just so you can see what the steps are. So if we look at this board here, for example, let's zoom out. So let's grab a component and stick that in there. So I'm just going to take a component, push the legs through the holes. Through that one. Push the component in. Okay, and then the important thing is we'll hold the component in place, then we'll turn the board over, and we're just going to bend the legs outwards in opposite directions. And the reason we do that is to stop the component falling out of the board whilst we're soldering it. Okay, so I'll put that down on there. Add the soldering iron. And if you have a look, let's just move that out of the way.
Do you find it easier to solder on the screen or underneath the microscope?
I'd rather look at it directly.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. It just amplifies the wobbling, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So what we're looking for on the end of the soldering iron tip is a nice shiny tip. If it's black, then the solder won't flow properly. That looks a little bit tarnished to me. So what we can do is, on each of the stations, we've got some brass wool, and we can put the soldering iron tip in there, and we can rub the tip, and that will clean off any of the dirt and oxide. Now if we have a look under there, that's a little bit brighter. Let's just go the other way, that's it. And then we'll just tin the tip, this is called, so we're just applying some solder to the tip of the iron. You can see that's flowed onto there nicely. And before we start soldering, we always do this because it means the tip is nice and shiny. So now if we have another look under there, you can see that's nice and silver looking, If we don't have that, then the solder won't flow properly. So let's solder the joint on there. So the technique will be to apply the tip to the component and the board at the same time, and then we'll apply solder to the tip, and then when that melts we'll then push the solder into the joint. We'll then remove the solder and then remove the tip. So the tip goes on, solder goes onto the tip, and then we're just feeding the joint now. We remove the solder and then we remove the tip. Okay, and then I'll do the second one just to show you again. So touching both the leg and the pad, solder on, and you see it melting, flowing in there nicely, and then we remove. So if we now zoom in on that joint so you can see that a bit better.
Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it?
So what we're looking for is a nice consistent joint all the way around the leg. That's probably a tiny bit too much solder, so an ideal solder joint will kind of look like a volcano if you imagine the leg sticking upright out of the bottom of the board and the solder flowing around the outside of the leg. Okay? Any questions at this point? Good. Right.